one? Now we're like twins. Yeah. I think, yeah, I think it's on the market.
Check, check.
Yeah. Yeah, ever pass.
Mhm. Yeah.
And not some, but as you go further on it.
Check, check.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Let's call to order the November 12th Lititz Borough Council meeting. Mayor, assuming nobody for the
Stand for the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
All right, as everyone knows, we got a pretty short agenda with one primary focus tonight. First item on the agenda, there is no new business. Steve, Elijah?
No.
Second item is report from the Borough Secretary to advertise calendar for 5.
Yep, this was all in your packets. All of these meeting committee dates are the same. The only notable change from this year will be that this meeting next year will be on a Wednesday because Veterans Day will be on that Tuesday and the office is closed that day. So that'll be advertised. Everything else is at their typical time with the typical holidays. Zoning Parks Committee in Monday in January and February are the following week, the fourth Monday, because of President's Day and Martin Luther King Day. Everything else is pretty much typical.
One quick question, if I might, about the regional plan meetings. Can you just say a little bit about, is that just projected as in terms of when we'll be meeting only twice a year?
So those aren't actually the regional plan meetings. These are the coordinating committee with the school district, which we haven't had lately. We're basically having those as placeholders, and those are always on the fourth Thursday, which doesn't happen too often. So these are placeholders at this point. But yeah, with the development of the comp plan, we haven't had that. The regional plan meetings will, we're not sure when that'll be, but that'll probably be more quarterly.
Okay, thank you.
I'm saying that the meeting she had a question about, which are a joint meeting with Lititz, Warwick, Elizabeth Township, and the school district, are typically on the fourth Thursdays, which there are 2 of those on the calendar that's to be advertised. But that's not this meeting. And typically, if there's a question, you should come up and use the microphone because we do have people online that are listening right now, and they won't be able to hear you from the audience.
Okay. Any other questions, council? If not, we're going to be looking for a motion to advertise.
Move to approve the calendar and advertise.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion approved. All right. Item number 3, which we are primarily here for tonight, is the subcommittee report on finance to review the draft 2025 budget. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our buddy Ken.
Okay. Thank you, Steve, and good evening, everybody, and audience. Good evening to you as well. First couple of things. The format for tonight is going to be like last year. Let's go through each fund and let's take a few questions after the fund is reviewed, and then if we have a lot more questions, we can just hold those to the end. Is that all right with you, Steve?
Perfect.
Okay. Also want to make an announcement that the Lititz Borough and the Finance Committee will hold another public budget meeting for December 10th at 7 o'clock right here in Borough Hall. So that's an opportunity for, once we've gone through this process, we give the public a chance to come in and have some question and answer period. So that's scheduled for December 10th. Tuesday, December 10th at 7 o'clock right here in Borough Hall. Also want to emphasize to council that the 2025 balanced fund results are all estimates at this point. And we have 9 funds to review this evening. So we're going to get started, but before we do, we'd like to take the opportunity to just catch everybody up on how we see the surplus that we received last year. So we're going to have Rob come up and address this one-page summary so that everybody has a chance to understand what we know now. While he's doing that, the Finance Committee's had an opportunity to speak with each council member to help them understand what we've learned over this past year.
Okay, so for council members who want to follow along, this would be on page 17 of your general fund expenses. So I think everybody there, close to it. So what I want to do is kind of walk you through 2023 and then into 2024 and talk about our surplus a little bit more. So the first number I want to draw your attention to is in the column under 2023 actual, the $1.9 million at the beginning balance. That number reflects the cash we had on hand as of January 1st, 2023. And as we go down through that column, the next number, net income, is income we had as of December 31st, 2023, and then expenses of 7.4 million, once again, as of December 31st, 2023. And you'll see our end of year net balance, which is $3.6 million. And down here at the annual recap, that $1.6 million, that should sound very familiar to everyone. That was the number that we had talked about as far as being extra or left over from 2023. So this is the key point here. When we get into the next column over, the 2024 budget and the beginning balance, that number right here, the end of year net balance, gets rolled right up into our beginning balance. Essentially, the cash we had on hand as of the end of the year is what we start our budget with in 2024. So that's a big jump from 2023, 1.9 to 3.6. And that's where our $1.6 million is rolled up into. There is not a separate fund. There's not a CD or a separate account where the $1.6 million was sitting at. It was sitting directly in our operating general fund. As we go through the 2024 year, you can see that our projected income was $8.4 million and our projected expenses was 8.8 with an end of year net balance of 3.3. Once again, the same math applies. This end of year net balance comes up to what we think 2024 will end up as. And once again, the numbers go as you see them there. The big takeaway there, if you look at the net expenses year over year over year, continue to climb, while the income does a little bit of a climb from 24 where we thought it would be to where it's actually going to be, but it is a decline from where we ended 2023. So all that put together means that the surplus is wrapped up into our operating fund. There is no separate fund for it. And that's really the basis for the surplus. And I'm happy to answer any questions, or if Ken or Chris has anything they want to add to that.
I'd like to add to that, Rob, is just that as we've reviewed this and learned the wisdom of the resolution back in council made in 2013, was that you would take this surplus and then you would apply that or evaluate that during the budgeting process. So to me, it's not a one-year evaluation; it's a multiple-year evaluation of this surplus and how the rising expenses of 2025 impacts this cash that we have on hand. When you have to have a fund balance to run your government, that is a guideline that governs the use of that surplus.
I think the other thing to look at is if you look at the consistency of the path of the beginning balance, obviously in 24 and 25 is, it's within a couple $100,000 there of 3.6 to 3.4. And then if you also look at the end of year balance of 23, 24, 25, obviously there's a little bit more now, but it slowly starts decreasing by the time you get to the end of year 25.
Right.
So to your point of looking at over a series of years rather than an individual year at a time, there's not much of a dip there. Yes, we're going from 3.6 to 3.3 to 2.8 of end of year balance, which is in reality not a good sign. That's declining, but if we didn't have that surplus and we're looking at it as a combined year, we would have a big problem.
Just take it, we did a lot of what ifs with the computer spreadsheet. What if you didn't have rising expenses? That'd be a different scenario. But that's not the case here in the borough. We have rising expenses. So that's plays out there as well. Before we had this understanding, I would like to give Rob and the team credit that we were looking at how does a borough responsibly handle a surplus. One of the ideas that we had was that we always want to retire debt, our obligations that might be out there. Another idea was to make sure that all the other fund balances were in their proper balance. If we had a deficit, we wanted to fix it. And that's not the case here. The third item was to look at how we could maybe fund capital projects that we know we have. And our department heads, both Public Works and Police, have done a great job starting to develop a scorecard so we can have a vision of what's coming. So those are some ideas that we had at the very beginning, but this revelation here, as we understand it, is where we are.
So Ken, help me understand, the auditors reported a fund balance at the end of the year, correct?
Mhm.
And so what you're saying is, even though we had a fund balance, fund balance at the end of 2024, when we went about budgeting for 2025, we realized that that surplus would pretty much be eaten up by the things that you just mentioned that we have obligations for going forward in 2025.
Yes, sir.
When we thought we had some cash to do some special projects in 2025, that was not the case. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of, as Ken said, you're looking at it over a series of years, 3 to 5 years. Kind of, again, you're hoping there is no major roller coaster of the end of your balance there. But you get some years where you've got a little bit more, but you're looking at it over a series of years for the budget. And that's where I was saying, if you look at the consistency, just simply look at the end of your debts at the bottom there, the 3.6, 3.8. Obviously, that would be different at a series of together.
Jerry, when we put this budget together with the teams, we looked at what we could transfer for the capital improvement. And one of our criteria was making sure we had a fund balance at work, but also what are our obligations? So you're going to see tonight, we do have some obligations. We have to pay our principal and interest for the GO bond. That's an obligation. We have an Axon payment we're obligated to support for our police department. So we tried to use common sense where we could to figure out how we construct this budget and make it work for our team.
And I think the notes, I think Rob or Ken, you have off the side there where you look at the percentage for the end of year balances. I was curious to see if we would have saw what's the end of year total balance in 22, 21, the previous years, but you have that basically noted in a percentage here. It looked like actually then at 22, we probably we're not as good, but basically we're averaging in the, it's 35, went down to 19 that year, 49, 40, 30. So it's got some consistency there also, other than 2022 was the one that's the anomaly.
Yep. Never had a surplus that big.
Can you remind me, do we have a policy around fund balance and what percentage fund balance we are obligated to maintain or we have committed to maintain?
Yes, Mary, you're right. Back in 2013, council had a resolution that established a fund balance policy stating that we like to shoot for a 25% fund balance average with a guardrail of 19% being the lowest and 35% being the highest for the general fund.
That was in 2013, that was
2013, I
adopted.
believe so.
Yes, and it's resolution 806.
You could get a copy of that. If somebody could get a copy of that to us,
Yes, ma'am.
that would be great. And that was 19 and 35%, did you say, is the guardrails? Thank you.
Question. So I see then we've got the 2025 budget fund balance projection of 30%, but then we start dipping to 17 in 2026, 4% in 2027. So what do we need to do to not get to that? What plans do we have?
That's part of tonight's discussion is to let council know where we are and to start preparing our thought process for what's coming. We have rising expenses, Tanea,
Yeah.
and that's needed to serve the community. There's no doubt. I'm not complaining about that. We need those to serve our community. So we have to take care of staff. We have projects, but we need to be aware of it as we make financial decisions. And we can consider some or some things we can do, but that's something we're going to share with you tonight. We want you to be aware of where we are, so we plan and we budget well.
And you can see that also, the recap at the bottom there. You'll see that 1.6 there at the beginning. You can see, in 25, 2025, we're looking at a deficit, 100,000. So it is trending in the wrong direction.
Right.
Basically, Steve, our expense growth is outpacing our revenue growth.
And Ken, I think our task tonight is to make sure we focus on the 2025 budget as our foundation document going forward. We know that in the next 2 or 3 years, we have some work to do to make these adjustments, both on the expense side and the revenue side. But yeah, we have a tendency to look forward to the future based on this, and we just don't want to get wrapped up in that conversation until we get our hands around the 2025 budget.
Yeah, we got to be mindful of
Absolutely.
this year.
That's what I,
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to start out, I think your funds are in order. We're going to start out with the general fund, and we're going to talk about revenue briefly, and then we're going to jump to expenses. So you should have some pie charts. Rob has developed those. Nice visual for you to quickly look at where our revenue comes from and also where our expenses are allocated. So looking at revenue, the real estate property taxes are our first category. You can see that's our best estimate on what the calculations that Rob has as of, I think it was October 31st. Under miscellaneous taxes, just calling out the realty transfer tax. We benefited by the property sale of Johnson & Johnson to Kenview and gave us a huge shot of revenue there. We budgeted 150 this year, but we are aware of the possibility of the Penn Medicine building being sold. It's on the market, but we did not put that in the number, so it could come during the course of the year. The earned income tax is an estimate by the Lancaster County Tax Collection Bureau, and so we use that number to figure out that revenue. Skipping on down, interest earnings. We have 4 sweep accounts, and that's totals right around 3.3 million, and we're estimating about a 4.3% interest rate to get that number. So we do anticipate maybe some slight reduction in interest rates in 2025. This year, we're recognizing the LEAF grant or LEAF Act grant in intercompany or intergovernment revenue of $109,000. Skipping on down into protection and inspection, you can see some of the categories there. Work School District has hired their own staff, so we do not need to provide staff for that anymore. Chief, are we still just using the Elizabeth Township as a placeholder, or is that alive or no? Okay. Highway and street. Yep.
We're on page 3 right now, just so they can follow along.
One question about the LEAF Act grant. Will that cover the entire majority of it?
It's 80%.
Okay.
And has that already been approved, or that is an application we'll be submitting? What's the status of that?
Yeah, we've got awarded that grant in 2022 or 23, but we're not actually
Okay.
going to get the machine until sometime next year.
Okay.
Ken, I think you're on page 3 there.
Yep.
Sections and inspection.
Yep. Nothing really to point out there. Highways and streets at the bottom of page 3. Recognizing some budgeting for public works labor. It's a small number, but nothing really to point out in great detail. So I'm turning the page to page 4.
Ken, one quick question if I can. The street openings
Mm-hmm.
is quite a big jump from 2024 budget.
I can take that, Ken.
Or Rob.
Yeah. So Yeah, Mayor, that's, it's a big number going down. I've talked with UGI and their engineers. They don't anticipate a lot more projects within, Lititz Borough. So I took the number down a little bit because they told me the same thing the prior year, if you look at the numbers. So,
Okay.
it is really, kind of an outlier that it's a guess, my best guess,
Okay.
based on what I get from them.
Yeah, we had only budgeted 12, but the year end was 117. Plus
Yeah.
all the-
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they said it should go down next year. Like I said, we don't know until they start putting in the permits.
Thanks,
Thank
Rob.
you.
And the parking meters, $100,000 is what? Wow.
Yeah, we raised parking to 50 cents, I think.
2 years ago, Chief?
Yeah.
Dollar now.
And today we added, pardon? We also bought 10 new meters in addition to the first purchase, and they're deployed already now, right? Okay.
Yeah, keep in mind, we replaced all of the meters at the request of our community, basically, between the merchants and the community members who come downtown and pay for parking, wanted to have the option of paying by credit card and not having to carry change around. So we
Right.
had a big expenditure to invest in the new parking meters and also invest in the software that goes along with handling the credit card transactions. So, so it was necessary to raise the rates.
Okay, moving over to page 4 at the top, garbage fees, that'll be budgeted at $92 per household per quarter this year, no change.
Question on that. It says the contract expires 12/31. So will you look for another company to beat that rate, or how do you typically do that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We usually have 3 different bids that come in, and that
Okay.
process will probably start in the 3rd quarter of this coming year.
Yeah, we'll receive those next year.
Okay.
But every 3 years.
Yeah, I have it flagged on their calendar, and then we'll be getting information.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, under skipping on down to miscellaneous, that let's see, my notes here.
He's looking, hey, that's one of the things that well aware did jump a couple years, got the bid.
Right.
One.
Okay.
Okay, and then we do get some revenue for event personnel that support our events in town. And then we do get cell tower rental. It's on top of Kissel Hill, I believe.
This whole tower, yep.
And then we do get police reimbursement for DUIs and other things where the chief and the team help other municipalities. And then we also get income from the railroad triangle rental for the parking lot there at ABC. So that all balls up into that number there for miscellaneous income. All right, and then moving on down, I am on the transfers, page number 5. See that from water, we're expecting $788,000. That's for the 2020 note payment. From sewer, we're also expecting $550,000, which also is dedicated for the principal and interest payment for the 2020 note. Stormwater fund is also transferring $148,000 to help with that 2020 note payment. The total revenue that we're expecting in 2025 for the general fund is 8.7 million. This is about a 3.3% increase, and the increases can be categorized mainly from interest earnings, real estate, property tax, and what's the third category? I don't have the original now.
Earned income?
It's the intergovernmental.
It's the leaf act. It's the
The leaf act, yeah.
109,000 leaf act. So that's where the rises are coming.
And I see a note that the tax collection bureau prediction, it has not been received yet, so we might get a little bit more there if income's
Yep.
going up.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay.
The interesting thing there is you just look at the difference between the 2024 and 2025. We're only talking $20,000 difference of additional income forecast another year. So
Yep.
keep in mind as we go with expenses, increase more than $20,000, we're headed in the wrong direction.
Thank you. Okay, let's jump over to the general fund and expenses, and we've got a lot of exciting things to review and discuss. You know, the general fund is where the borough does transact most of its tax receipts and most of its business activities. You know, that's where we pay most of our vendors from. So there's a lot of activity here. We're going to start out by just looking at the expenses for salaries for our legislative body and executive. We're happy where they are, where there's going to be no change. We are planning for some salary increases for our teams that work here in the borough. So we're planning for a 4% increase. You can see that we're going to recognize about an 8% increase in some of our healthcare or dental and hearing costs, but also a 1% decrease in the hospitalization. And on an organization this big, that's significant. Skipping on down to next page, number 7.
Can I have one question? Back
Yeah.
on 6. The financial administration salaries, who does that go to?
That's me.
Ah, ah. Mhm.
Okay. So just continuing on down, we have under the financial administration 402, the Waltz Group, that $90,000 represents their bookkeeping there. It's also where we pay bank fees. This is associated with the GO bond and the 2020 note. And then Pimentus, the electronic payment system that we implemented last year, there's a fee there that we need to pay, and that's where that money is recognized. That expense is there in that budget line.
And when I looked at that item, I just wondered if there's any opportunity for some savings there. Do we need to, the Waltz Group, this is the first year they did our budget. Is that correct? No.
No, this is
Audit,
our,
I mean, the audit.
oh, no, they're our bookkeeper.
Oh, the bookkeeper.
There's been a
Our
multi-year,
audit.
they help the office with bookkeeping on a weekly basis.
Oh, yeah. Okay. It's like a bookkeeping service we use for our management. Has that ever been contract reviewed or put that out for bid, or what's?
Yeah, any of these go out free. I forget what the cycle is for those.
No, these don't go out for like a rebid, no. When we initiate it, yes, it goes out to bid and we get responses back, but the Waltz Group's been here for many years.
I would say 7 to 8 years after the previous bookkeeper passed away.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, moving down to tax collection 403. Last year, you can see we budgeted $4,500 for contracted services. That was to get the Lancaster County Tax Bureau involved with our collection. So we had mailings, we had some setup costs, we had some upfront expenses. We don't have that this year. They will collect our taxes, and it'll just be at a 1.5% rate of the value that they're looking at.
That was
So
a decision
for-
we made last year.
So LST, I think we budgeted $150,000, so it'll be about $3,000 or so, I think, for that.
Mhm.
Okay, we budgeted, next line is legal, and we've budgeted funds there to take care of borough business.
What's the UGI escrow accounts? What is that exactly? That we
I
use?
can answer that one, Ken.
Legal.
That is part of our plan to help manage UGI better. We need Mike Davis basically to help us draft the language around setting up escrow accounts, contracts, things of that nature to give to UGI to have them sign into so that we can manage them better and hold them financially accountable for all the street opening permits that they have.
You're-
The legal fees estimated expenses based on this kind of this year experience, although there's 30,000 budgeted and ended in 2024, we're budgeting $60,000 for legal expenses. I guess it's hard to know what kind of litigations we're going to have going forward. Apparently, we had a number of litigations in this year that we had to fund. It's kind of discouraging that we need to fund these
There's some open,
legal.
as you're well aware, there's open litigation too. that
Yes, I understand.
Continue to budget. The one is noted there for the 6th Street Park,
Mm-hmm.
still open. Continue.
Okay, in section 405, which is on page 8, this represents how we compensate our clerks and secretaries here at the borough. So that also recognizes a 4% raise for 2025. If you pop down to the next section, data processing, we have funds allocated to support activities there with our data consulting service that is needed here. Would like to call out that we had planned to do a website upgrade this past year, and the way the budget stands right now, we've decided to delay. We're not going to put that in. We're going to hold off again. Okay, down on page 8, engineering 408. This represents the engineering that's necessary for the replacement of the HVAC in this building. We also had planned some money for our engineer to be available for any of the paving jobs that we have. If Public Works needs any advice or direction, that we have that resource set aside that they can get the information they need. So that's what is represented in that $35,000 engineering fee.
Oh, questions. The 6th Street traffic study too, that percentage will be shared with Warwick Township?
No, that's
No?
entirely within our borders.
Ours, okay.
And just to be clear, that's the 6th Street over at Orange, not 6th Street at,
Kissel Hill over
Kissel.
to wherever it stops past, what is that?
So the proposal right now is going to be looking at 4 different count locations across 6th Street in the borough. So there will be some east of Broad Street and there will be some west of Broad Street.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, because the borough, I'm just trying to picture the borough line ends just west of Bruce, right?
Yes, it ends
Yeah,
west of
so-
Spruce and then picks back up in Moravian Manor.
Yep.
So there'll be one in Moravian Manor, one near that line.
Yep.
And then 2 east of Broad. I think one's going to be at Cedar, and then one is between Laurel and Locust.
Okay.
Okay, I'm looking at page 9, section 409, buildings and plant. So want to just call out that we have some maintenance and repairs. I think we've allocated $25,000 to replace some first floor windows and ceiling tiles in this year's budget. We also have the HVAC contract and maintenance contract in that lower line there as well. And then please note that the police vehicle garage is listed there. And this was a discussion point last year. So want to just reconcile with everybody. We recognize that the building that we rent could be sold at any time. Currently, this building is located right behind Tomato Pie, and it's a valuable purpose. They have our Lititz stars, they have our road barriers for parades, and there's other equipment that's in there. It's ideal because it's downtown and it's close to serving the needs of the downtown, but it's not ideal in terms of storage. It's difficult to move around and it's not ours. It could be sold and we would be out of storage space. So last year we took the opportunity to look at an alternative. Andy and the team did have an alternative, but they've run into some challenges with our neighbor on where we'd like to put it. And so it's going to have to be planned. We're going to have to put it back on the planning board and look at where we can get a backup in case we need it for if there's a sale. Right now, Rob did talk to the owner. There's nothing imminent, so we do feel confident we can get through this year, but it's on our planning board. Anything else to add, Andy or Rob?
No, you said good.
Okay, let's move on down. Any other questions there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Police vehicle garage. So what exactly does that entail on that budget? You could maybe just explain that 20,000.
That's just the
290.
rent.
But that's the rent.
Oh, okay. All
That
right.
was the building he was just talking about that's behind It's
That's what you're talking about. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Gotcha. Gotcha.
And Chief, y'all kept some buildings there at one time.
I didn't
right?
realize it
Or
was
some
police
vehicles
because
there, right?
he was talking
Yeah,
about
that-
borough stuff.
Just
Yeah.
for everybody's education, I mean, that was what prompted us to build that new building for the police vehicles, because that was up for sale, and we thought we were going to be completely without ability. So now that is just used for storage, and most of the vehicles are up.
It should really be.
It really
Yeah,
should
yeah,
be
it should.
renamed, yes, at this
Exactly.
point, because historically
Right.
it was the police garage.
Yeah,
And that's
the
where the
police
police
vehicles
vehicles
were
were
in there.
stored.
Right.
But now that they have the new garage, they're not stored there anymore, and Public Works is utilizing that space for the
Okay.
storage of public. So we really should just rename that line item. Avoid any future confusion.
Right.
I also have a question about property insurance. And this is kind of an overall, as I looked through the entire budget, I noticed what appeared to be significant jumps in property insurance. So we can parking lot that if you want to, or if you want to address it here.
Yeah, I could talk about that. So I have a complete breakdown for you of all of our property and liability insurance. Long story short, it went up about 7% from last year. We try to divide that up as best we can amongst. So when you think about property specifically, we try to divide up between the sewer plant, which would have a lion's share of it. Borough Hall would have a lot, but probably not as much as the water treatment plant. And then Public Works falls in there as well. So we try to divide it up as best we can, but overall, yes, there was a 7 or 8% increase in the overall liability. So errors and omissions, police, professional, all those type of things.
And is that property insurance, is that what ended up covering the cost of the water main break down on Main Street?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions before we move to the 410 Police Department? Okay, the police department has quite a few budget lines, so I hope everybody's had a chance to look those over. I think for the most part tonight would be benefit by just mainly focusing on 3 lines, but I'm open to any questions that you have on page 9, page 10, or page 11. The 3 lines that I think we'd like to spend some time on is our salaries and our officer overtime and secretaries. So there's a lot of information in those budget lines that sort of planned next year and how we're going to operate. Would like to talk about that, but before I get there, any other questions on any other lines for the police department?
One thing, crossing guard salary. So that's what we pay, and the Warwick School District will pay the other 50%. Okay.
Okay. We can always take any questions on those lines, but what I'd like to share is there's a lot of information in these 69 budget lines for the police. And I think it's an opportunity for us tonight to unpack a lot of the plans that have been shared with us, and gives us a chance to have a conversation. So I'm looking at budget lines 140, 118, and 141.
Can you say those numbers again?
140, 118, and 141, I think, is the list. But Mary, the most important thing is some of this background. We have a talented team here. We have 17 people right now that serve the borough and protection for us. We have a chief, we have 3 detectives, 2 sergeants, 7 patrol officers, 2 admins, a civilian, and a school crossing guard that supervises. And so these people are organized to help protect us and help keep us safe. We're going to lose Chief Nye. Chief Nye is going to retire in May of 2025.
Right.
So he'll retire. He will remain on the borough's payroll at full salary, but just so you know that, until the end of 2026.
25.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Do you want to come to the microphone, Chief, so that,
Yeah.
yeah. We can pull it up for you, yeah.
it just, as our police contract states, I will have, my official retirement date is actually going to be August 11th, 2025. I'm leaving on May 2nd, 2025. I have 12 weeks, 13 weeks of vacation and comp time to use. And after that, then I have a sick time. I have 3,000 hours of sick time. And you're obligated to pay me 1,200 hours at 85% pay. So that's about 6 months after that. So it's 25 and a half weeks, you want to be precise. So it'd probably be right in the beginning of January of 26 when I would take care of all my sick time be paid off. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay. So does that make sense, Rob?
Well, I mean, it does. But we have you down as an admin employee. So you would get paid out all 3,000 hours of sick time.
I don't, I mean, I hate to say that I'd love to take that money, but that's not correct. Okay. According to the contract, the police and the public workers contract, that I have to follow the police contract.
I
Okay.
think we probably talk about it offline, but I think
Yep.
we got some discrepancies there, but
Okay.
it's all good. If
Yeah,
it's
but
gonna
I
be
mean,
less, yeah.
that's what I anticipate, but we can talk about it. You want to give it to me? That's great.
Okay, so we have a leader that's retiring, okay? And there'll be a portion of responsibility, obligation from the borough to take care of him as he enters into retirement. The chief and his staff have also made several recommendations and for us to consider tonight. One is there's some promotions suggested in their budget, which is a new organizational structure that they're looking at that would serve their department and the community. They have a part-time position that they'd like to move to a full-time position. They're also assuming in their plan that eventually we'll replace the chief. So there's a line for that or a comment on that. They're also recommending the police department this year will receive a 4% salary increase. That negotiation has been complete. So that's some of the things that are coming down the pike. The police department has also planned to hire 3 new patrol officers. They're working on the target date. We're hoping to get that zeroed in, but I've been informed that it's difficult with some of the processes that they have to go through. Right now, the existing officers are covering the gaps, and that creates an overtime line. And it's significant. It's been going on for 2 years, and there's a large number there that we've been handling.
Well, if everybody remembers, and correct me, Chief, we hired 3, we lost 2 of those 3. So we're kind of almost back to where we were 12 months ago already. So it's not like these are 3 new
Right,
from a year
Right.
ago. It's
right.
it's trying to get us back to where we tried to be a year ago. Right.
Right.
So it's not increasing the total number of people with the
Yeah.
plan.
Right, that's true. And I think the team, if they're fully staffed, is 21 or 20? Okay, but then the
total
organizational
staff?
chart that I got was 20 or 21? Right. So 16 is the police staff with the civilians being part of the team, but not, I understand. Okay, so that's the numbers that we're looking at. We have about 16 of staff, police staff, right? 19, okay. That makes sense with your organization.
That's what we're currently at. Okay,
Right.
gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
And the chief makes 20, right?
Now
No,
you
it's
see
included in
Included in the 16. Okay, thank you.
Steve.
Yeah, there'll be an overlap there.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Definitely. Okay. So we've got a plan there. Also need to let you know that that the healthcare enrollment period for folks is going to close on November 15th. So if we're making any decisions about part-time or full-time, just keep that in mind. Today, the 2025 police budget calls for an increase of $221,000 over the 2024 budget. The police department does represent a large part of our expenses in our annual general fund. And that's why it's important for us just to have a conversation and understand, what's happening. I think from our side, we see a leadership change, we see an organizational or structure change, and we see resources that are needed. And it's important that we all are aware of that and have the opportunity to understand it, ask questions, and also just have a better understanding of it. When the Finance Committee saw this, we thought it was just important that we pause and unpack some of the information, share it with everybody, and also prepare our team to answer questions. And so our team is here and prepared to answer any questions that we may have. So just I'm going to pause here and take some questions.
So the officer salary line item includes the recent organizational structure changes that I saw today from the.
It includes promotions that I think is what's been requested for the organizational change. Does that make sense?
It's including those
But-
additional potential proposed organizational changes.
In-
Granted, we still have to get through that process.
But no, we have officers that we need to replace. But in addition to that, I think I saw today an organizational chart that outlines some promotions and staffing structure and that kind of thing. I had not seen that before. And so I'm just wondering if these numbers include that.
Yep.
They
Yes,
do.
they do. A
So-
lieutenant and a sergeant. Is that right?
So go ahead. Talk to me about this.
Can you come up to the microphone, please? And get a whiteboard and some little dots, maybe.
So
Thank
Jerry, to answer your
Sure.
question, the number for the budget does include what we would call a reorganization.
Mhm.
Currently, we have 3 supervisors below the chief. When the chief retires, we're looking to reorganize to just change one of those positions, the sergeant's position, to a lieutenant position, and not add another sergeant position that's printed here. It would just be adding the 1 lieutenant position.
So you won't have 2 sergeants, you just have 1.
We would have 2 sergeants, 1 lieutenant, and the chief.
But just
Okay.
to,
So
Jerry,
3 administrators, just like we do now.
to your question, everything that's in that proposed organizational chart is in that. number
Right, I
we're
understand
right
that.
now.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
But I hadn't seen that till now. So it's a good conversation to have. Is that something we want to do now?
Well, let me just pause there a minute. There's, in my opinion, there's like a domino effect that's got to happen here. And this is a conversation the 3 of us had is we need to get through that process of the chief
Right, I understand.
sooner
that.
than later,
Yes,
because
we-
in my opinion, then that conversation of the chief will say, hey, this is how the structure is going to be. This is a proposal right now by the current chief. The incoming chief will, say, hey, here's what I want to propose as the lead. And I think what's happened is we're speaking to the individuals that would be part of that. So I would just say it's probably even more imperative to get that chief process through. So then we can start hopefully through the springtime, summertime to having this discussion, because I don't think we can get into the deep parts of that discussion tonight. But the good thing is we can budget for that scenario if that scenario happens. I mean, we're saying we're not necessarily approving that structure tonight, but we're approving the dollar value if that structure were to occur.
Right. Does that answer the question?
kind of.
Okay.
I agree with Steve. I think organizational structures and changes need to happen after the new police chief is
Correct, and
is in place. To me, that's going to be one of the major responsibilities of the new chief, is to take a look at the structure and see how best the department functions for the needs of our community, staffing and all that. And I would be a little hesitant to approve something right now that the new chief hasn't had a chance to applying for.
Yeah, I don't think we're saying we're going to approve that structure. This is the proposal, and this is just having the value to that proposal. I would rather be on the conservative side. So if this is approving something, and who knows, whatever we eventually come up with is a little less than what being proposed right now. But I would rather not go the other direction, propose this, and then whatever the new chief comes up with exceeds the number we're looking at.
And thoughts?
So, Steve, thank you, Steve. So Steve Lee, so you're saying, you're recognizing the plans that have been made, but you're not necessarily approving the plans for the structure, but you're recognizing the dollar value that's in those lines for next year.
Yeah, we gotta
Whether it
recognize-
happens or not is what you're saying. You're not, because it still needs to like go through personnel and that.
Yep.
The
we're not
mayor
approving, we're not approving the structure, the proposed structure right now. That's going to happen after the new chief. We get through that process. Hold on a second. We got to get through that process. Then that new chief will say, hey, here's the proposed organizational structure. I'm going to have these promotions, I have these people, and bring it through the personnel committee. And obviously, let's hope it's not more than what we're budgeting here.
Yeah, I hear that. Normally, when you approve a budget, you kind of approve the expenses, and people tend to weigh into those. And so I hear you.
Well, a lot of the things
we have to be just
a lot of
aware
things
of that.
we're approving tonight are really their proposals. Beyond just this. I mean, a lot of things we're approving tonight are proposals that forecast the future. But I think for the budgets, just so everybody, we're looking at a potential scenario, right? We could have 10 different potential scenarios we could put into this right now, but we've got one that we're looking at as a potential scenario. We're not necessarily approving the structure that's going to have to happen. That's going to have to come before us, hopefully sometime spring, summer, of the new organizational structure through the personnel committee. But this is just a scenario played out right now, much like I said, every other line item we have in here. Nothing is, exact dollars, the proposals. Many of these line items are. So this is a proposal we're just looking at this point.
Now, one clarification to that, when the budget is adopted, the 4% pay increase or any notations like that will be approved.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
Which includes
so I
basically,
guess I feel like I need a lot more clarity on this issue of what we are actually approving. If those provisions have been included in terms of the details behind that line item, I just want to make sure that we're all
Yep.
very clear on what we are approving.
what would be good, Mary, to your point? So obviously we've had the discussions about the police contract, and say, okay, if we were to just take the current police contract, it gets us to this number, whatever that, is inclusive of the number we're looking at here. And then your point to say, okay, if this number includes the promotion of this person, this adding that, what are those line items beyond the police contract we are approving? Hopefully next month, a couple weeks.
Steve, I'd just like to say, I do agree with perhaps some of the things that Jerry is thinking, and that is he's been doing some research for getting ready, paving the way for the new chief. There's some community input, and I think that's valuable because that information that's come from a wide number of sources can help probably shape that decision for organizational structure. And I just think it's a good process, and we want to encourage that so that we get the best service, the best leadership for our community. I just don't want to. I just think it's important that we follow that. And
Rob, do you think you could show us what I was just trying to explain, and hopefully I'm explaining it right? I mean, we went through 6 months of a contract negotiation with police, and if we were at the current state, what that budget number would be. And then with these changes we're talking about, the promotions and everything like that, how much would that be above what we're talking about right now? You understand my question? So we went through the police contract negotiation, And we gave the 4% increase to the current staff right now. So how much would that be? And then if we add the 3 staff, it's going to be this much more. And then if we do the promotions, it's going to be this much more with the organizational changes.
So Sergeant Hahn came up with a provision here that kind of shows some of those things, not necessarily the 3 staff. We just looked at what the contract would be for those staff members if we were to hire 3. But to prorate the new chief and the possibility of a lieutenant for 7 out of 12 months next year, it's a $5,000 difference.
Okay.
For what
That's
the
the kind of stuff I
contractual,
want to see.
right.
What would be the,
And I think Sergeant Hahn has this paper for everyone.
I would just say if we have, you're answering the question that I'm looking
Right.
for is what are those itemized differences that would affect the organizational change differences that would affect the overall budget? You gave one item there. We promoted halfway through a sergeant to a lieutenant. If we do it, I'm not saying we're definitely approving that $5,000. If there's other things with that proposed organizational chart, if you had those bullet pointed, I think that would help answer some of the questions with the concerns I think I'm hearing from Jerry.
Right.
But if you can share that, I'm saying not tonight, but if you could share that with us before we,
Yeah, I think it has been, sounds like
okay.
Sergeant Hahn had shared that. So
Ken, if you don't mind, if I may, at the risk of complicating the issue further, I'm going to complicate the issue a little further and let y'all know that there were additional asks and requests in the police department budget for 2025, which were not included in these numbers. And when we get further down the line items, you'll see that there's additional requests that we need to consider, to me, as a trade-off for the total package. Should we be considering some of these other things in lieu of these promotions and or whatever changes? So just keep in mind that there are additional requests that have been made that we have not included in the budget numbers, but need to be looked at and considered and discussed at some point.
So Steve, with that comment, that there is some capital request. Just to stay with the discussion with the police department council, do we introduce those items? Sound like a good plan?
Yeah.
Okay, let me call you to go back to the back of your expenses in the general fund. I'm gonna have to find it myself. Okay, it's page 16. So right now, the budget stands that we were going to transfer $618,000 for some very specific capital improvements. Okay, so we had the it's the GO bond principal, it's the HVAC replacement, it's the $50,000 for the Axon, which is a obligation for the police for their software and equipment for protection and reporting, and then there's some equipment. A dump truck equipment that we need to provide. We have for Andy. So those are the things that are in that $618,000. What's not in there is some type of grinder for the public works department to remove striping and paint on the road. And then for the police department, we have about $115,000 request for capital, and these include replacement of handguns. Additional replacement of a police car and a locker room. And so those are the 3 requests that total $115,000. Within that, the police department is able to sell existing vehicles or other assets, but it's primarily vehicles, right, guys? And some weapons that will be retired. And so that comes up to an approximate value of $20,000. So the difference is right around $95,000, to your point, Chris, that is being requested for these areas. And there's good reasons for them. And so let me just stop. Is everybody up to speed with the request?
locker room? Yeah, just explain to me what that means.
In
And-
the new police building, there's a
So there's a
space.
locker room you guys have now, obviously, in your own building
It's a
currently?
space.
May I? So there's a couple things going on here. We had a locker room in the budget years ago. We adjusted, I guess, and we don't, but we do have a primitive locker room that's there. But there's something that's changed. We are a co-ed force. We are attracting talented women and men. And so their privacy and their safety is important. So the police department has come up with a plan for a co-ed locker room that provides privacy for changing into their civilian gear and their police gear when they come to and from work. Okay. There's also a provision in that locker room for handoffs. As a squad comes in, they can give a report of what's happened on the day and let the next crew know what's going on. So there's some handoff of information as well as a locker room for changing. And so this would be built to serve male and female officers. So that's the background.
But this is not currently in the police department's building next door. There's a facility for women and men in that one?
Tanae is asking a very good question.
I'm just
We've all asked the
confused.
same one. I had to learn. So there is a male and female locker room downstairs.
Okay.
And so
Isn't that where they just, I have no idea. I would assume that's where you get changed when you come to work.
Very good question. So
Educate me.
you have probably a logistics challenge that would happen here. Where do they park? And then where do they get the information if everything is going to be oriented out at the police garage or locker room there? Am I saying it right? There's a little bit of logistics.
The garage, has anybody been out? Has all of you been out there to the garage, police garage?
No.
I have
Okay.
not had a tour. It would be helpful to have Sergeant Hahn.
So out there, we have just a one room facility that can be it can be locked. Yeah, it can be locked, but the lockers aren't the right size and it's not divided. It's just whoever's in the room is in the room. So if I'm in there, it's a male room. If it's a female, it's a female room. But we've had some issues with is that right? Yeah. So let the officer take care of the issues.
So for those who aren't familiar with it, I'll try to visualize it. It's a pole barn primarily used for the storage of the patrol vehicles. Within it is one single small room that currently serves two purposes. The first is it's a sub office. So there's a computer and a desk in there that officers can do most of the same type of reporting, administrative work that they can do here, but remotely out there for various situations where it would be more prudent to do it out there. In that same space, undivided, is a rack system where officers hang various items of clothing, their external vests, where they get dressed, get undressed. So what we're encountering is a space that is being duly used as a locker room at the same time that officers are in that space doing computer work. It's a co-ed space, so there's no separation for male and female employees to get dressed or undressed separately. So what we've encountered is a situation where an officer who may be trying to get a report done has to leave that space so that another officer of the same or different sex can come in and get dressed or undressed, or vice versa. There is a small bank of lockers out there. The best analogy I would give you is if you think of like high school system type lockers, they're not big enough to fit all the officers' equipment that they're required to wear, particularly the ballistic vests they don't fit in. So they keep shirts, trousers hung up in those lockers, but inside the multi-purpose room, I'll call it, is a rack system that the vests hang. So the proposal would be to simply take one parking space that is adjacent to this room now, add a couple of freestanding walls, divide it up to have a true separated male and female locker room with a locker system that is adequate to hold all the officers' equipment, but then also provide a space separate from the office space where male and female officers can change privately, not in that same space where somebody could be typing a report, doing whatever. To answer the question about the logistics of this facility versus that, all the patrol vehicles are stored at that pole building. That's where officers report to start their shift. That's where officers report to end their shift. So as one shift of officers are coming on duty, as the other shift of officers are going off duty, that's where the happenings of the shift are exchanged. If there's any, carryover from one shift to the next, that's where that happens. So that's the situation that we find ourselves in. Officers customarily do not come here pre and post shift to get changed to then just move to the separate facility. Most of that happens out at that pole barn behind Public Works. So that's the situation that we're in. Obviously, we're trying to mitigate risk of an inadvertent incident where somebody's in a state of undress and somebody else would walk in. We want to have a legitimate and private area for that to happen that's separate from the workspace. Currently, it's kind of a conglomerate of a co-ed locker room plus a workstation. So what we're trying to do is to separate that space, mitigate some of those concerns and those risks, and have it truly be functional to the needs and the way the department operates with the shift changes. If that makes sense.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I presume you would entertain visits
Of course.
to see in person. That would
Right.
be
Seeing it with
helpful.
your own eyes would make a lot more sense.
Yep.
I know some members of council have, but for those who haven't, we could certainly entertain that.
Yeah, I've seen that space and I agree with your assessment and your description. It's got some challenges, absolutely.
It may be worthwhile noting that the original design for the police garage included a locker room facility, and that had to be cut at some point for various constraint reasons,
Correct.
mostly financial, I believe, at the time.
Right.
But, yeah,
And
it
now
wasn't
what
the
we're-
original design.
Sorry. And now what we're realizing is the practical effects of that.
So we have a specific line item cost estimate for that. Okay.
Part of the
That's
95.
part of,
Total.
right.
Sure.
Yeah, the chief and his team have given us that number,
Okay.
right? And we've some of the things that happened where we got an easement for the building, right?
There was a question about an engineering stamp that was resolved.
Right. And then also they're willing to do some of the labor themselves for the installation, I believe. So there is a different number and I'll have to get it to you.
That's part of the 115, which was
Right.
reduced to the
It is.
95.
It's not
It-
not in the budget.
Right. I understand that. Okay. Thank you. I have a couple of other items if we're,
Well,
ready to-
let's finish up on just, unless
Yeah.
it's about these, Mary, specifically, as we can try to, unpack all of the information that's in that side item. So a lot of this is not part of that 115 down to 95 is not part of the 618 number right now. So we definitely
Right.
need to at least finalize the discussion of that.
So Chris, we were talking about the operational day-to-day and now we jumped to capital. So now we have the full picture.
Yeah.
Really, we have the full picture of the request. So is there anywhere else you'd like to take us or look at as we sort of finish out this discussion for police?
We can have some more discussion tonight, but I really feel it needs an extended conversation, outside of this meeting between the Personnel Committee and the Finance Committee to fine tune some of these requests.
that would be very helpful.
Okay, so Steve, I think I accept the direction there. I think we have some time here to get together and work on some of these specifics with personnel and finance. Is that right, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of things with that. And I would just share, again, Personnel Committee, Jerry and Christine, this, again, the whole proposal for organizational structure, we have to bring into I'll call it phase two of the discussions of the chief transition. And even, I would say, I know I've been talking to both of you, probably even more of a pressing issue that needs to get moved along, because there's going to be months following that the organizational structure discussion is going to occur. Step one's getting the new chief signed. Step two is getting new chief to get to that organizational structure. And I'm just saying we don't want to wait until that can't fall off until next fall.
Right. And we have a transitional plan in place. We are close to finalizing a ad for the position, and we have a schedule in place for to have the applicants respond to the ad, and then a plan in place for interviews, which we hope would be completed by the end of January, with the recommendation made to the council at the January council meeting.
Okay.
Steve, can I
Yep. Go ahead.
bring up another issue? The question of regionalization has been brought before the council. I have heard the question by others in the community as well. I think that it is our duty, in accordance with our guiding principles, to undertake that.
Nope, I absolutely agree. I mean,
I'm concerned that proceeding with hiring a chief before that study is done locks us in to something. It takes us down a path. And could therefore become part of the justification for a particular outcome of that study. So I don't know what the solution is. This is a very difficult conversation to have. But I think we owe it to the community when we're talking about being safeguarding public resources, being fiscally responsible, being open and transparent. I think it's our duty to undertake that. So I guess I just need to know when does that need to happen as part of this? Because personally, I feel like if we proceed with hiring a chief, we've committed ourselves to something for at least some period of time.
so there's three things in there. I would say, one, I don't think anybody disagrees that the study needs to occur, so that we can, to your point, our responsibility to say, we analyzed it, and obviously I'll always say there's much more than just, it's much more than just a financial decision when you're looking at that. So I think everyone would agree, I personally would agree, yes, we are responsible to do the study. I would say that study, I would say, is not necessarily, from a timing perspective, affecting the discussion tonight of the budget. Not like we're going to change the budget in the 2 months based on that study, because in my opinion, a study like that is going to be several months. It's not like 1 month, 2 months. And the second thing to your question about the chief transition, again, in my head, right or wrong, a study like that could take 6 months to 12 months. I have no idea, to go through that. We need to have a chief in place, because chief is technically done being the chief in May of 25. So we need a chief beyond May of 25. So that wouldn't, in my opinion, marry us to never going in a different direction based on the results of a study. But a study is going to take a period of time. If a decision were to go one way versus the other, I don't think that's going to happen instantaneously, but we still need to have a chief in place starting in June. I don't think, if the study showed that we were to go regionalization, I'm not saying that would be, but if it did, that wouldn't occur by June of 25. So I think, it's not like if you go down the path and we have a chief and we have something, we need to have a structure in place for the community starting in June of 25. Who knows what the study would take, a transition would take. But we need to have something until that point, if it were to happen.
And just to expand on that, I feel that whatever this study takes shape as, that's yet to be determined, and whatever this study happens to say, whether that's regionalization, partial regionalization, stay the same, or some other option, we don't know. But I do feel that it is the chief of police, along with his staff, who know the public safety concerns of this community and how this community works. They are the ones to champion the effort to make any sort of a major change to how this community is served. And so I think we need to have a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Robust is not quite, but we need a robust chief in place to transition us to something like that, and to even
If
explore,
something like that were to happen.
even to explore something like that.
Well, to all of your points, those are all great. But I don't know that we're capable of making that we'd have to get a consultant most likely. So if we're serious, then we need to look at budgeting. So I just leave you there. If you're going to do something, you'd have to put some
Yeah,
budget
you have
money.
to have money for somebody to do
Right.
a study
A
like
study.
that. This group cannot probably do that full comparison. Obviously, we can do the dollar comparison.
This is absolutely wonderful discussion. Any other comments, questions?
But I think back to what started Mary's question, I think we need to, we're not going to make any overall change like that in the next 12 months. It's impossible, logistically. So we have to continue down the path of a chief transition. We can't control. Chief is going to be done being the chief in May of 25. So we need to have somebody in that position. And in my opinion, it doesn't matter to who, it would obviously, there would have to be somebody in that, Chris's point, somebody in that role, whether or not a change were to happen or not. All right. I'm not sure where we started with
I have a
Mary
couple
had
of-
some other questions.
Yeah, I have a couple of specific questions. One is, it relates to the, let's see, new police car capital request. I see that we have a vehicle fuel. It's line, 231 on page 10. Another $5,000. So I'm just curious, it looks like our fleet is pretty old, and I'm wondering about fuel efficiency. I start to think about things like, operating costs of vehicles, and is there something that we can look at in terms of increased fuel efficiency with newer vehicles that might help with offsetting some of those costs? 'Cause we're looking at a roughly $5,000 budget increase for fuel. So that's just one question. That's up to Ken and Rob, I'd say.
Yeah, this has been great. Good discussion, good answers, good research.
Rob had asked us to do a 5-year plan for a vehicle starting in 2026. So we presented that plan to lease the vehicles for 5 years. Then we can look at if you want to use hybrid vehicles or whatever. So we haven't gotten to that point. That's going to be the next chief's decision to make that. But Rob had asked for a 5-year plan, and that's what our plan was. We gave that proposal, just a very limited proposal, what we think would be the best. Our fleet is older, and we just keep kicking the can down the road. And I know a lot of departments have gone to hybrids, and they see a significant cost savings. So you're right.
Thank you.
Now hybrids are much more expensive though in initial cost.
Your capital costs.
Yep.
Get bound your operation payback.
Did I answer your question, Mary?
I did. Thank
Do you have any
you.
other questions?
I do have
Okay.
another one.
All right.
The
Getting away here.
crossing guard salary is shared 50% with Warwick School District.
That's correct.
When was the 50% split established, and is that subject to negotiation at all?
That's been established a very long time ago. And I'm not 100% sure. Elijah's coming up to the mic, so let him go.
I believe that's actually in the borough code, is that you can basically charge up to 50% to the school district.
Okay.
I don't believe we can charge any more, so that would be based on the crossing guard salaries and 50% of that.
Okay, thank you, Elijah.
So Mary, I'm going to jump in because I want to call out, again, good discussions between me and the police department this whole budget season. So Carrie brought up the idea of on that crossing guard, we pay 50% and share that with the school district. What has not been shared has been workers' comp and liability, and we pay all of it. So it was his idea, and that's on my list to make it a conversation that we have with them to start seeing if we could share more of the expenses of that. So just want to say that while you're here.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great. Uniform maintenance, I presume that's like laundering and
Correct.
the such. Okay. And there's a contracted services line item that's quite significant. Can somebody?
That includes a lot of our report writing system, our Cody system. And we're like any type of report that we do. And there's a lot of other things that are in there. Every month we get an email bill. So anything that we contract outside of for police services, that's what falls under that line item.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
Vehicle insurance dumped quite a bit.
I'll let Rob
With an
throw into that
older
one.
fleet, I'm just curious, is that just insurance rates increasing or?
Well, 2025 is a little unique. So they just bought 2 new vehicles, but we haven't sold any yet. So
Okay,
we've got 2 more we're paying for. And yeah, insurance just keeps going up.
okay.
Whether you're young, whether they're old or not old, it doesn't really matter.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Anyone else on police?
Yeah, questions. Just confirming. So you are assuming 3 new officers, but nobody's in line to start yet? Okay. So the 155,000 for overtime is just an anticipation to cover up until you hire the new guys. And are you going after individuals that are already current police officers? You don't have to send them through the academy? Okay. And then are we budgeted for paying the chief's salary and then hiring the new chief will kind of,
Yes, that's in the budget.
okay, that's, and assuming for how many months that's going to be.
7, I believe. I think it's 7.
And that's part of the 1,559,000 and all that. Okay.
Yep.
Want to make sure that was in there. And you said you haven't sold those 4 vehicles that say you have them on the sell line in the 2025 budget. Sell. Do you see them off to the side? It'd be number 251 or 250. None of that. Okay. But that's what you anticipate that you'll get for them. Okay.
No, that's the maintenance for them.
That's the maintenance. That's not the sell price. Yeah.
Okay. I gotcha. Maintenance. And just question, handguns, I didn't know they expire. Or do they? Just curious.
So your guns are old, right? They've been around for a while. And Jared, you've mentioned to me that it's the new Sighton, that the red dot that improves accuracy and conflicts. It's highly effective. Yeah, sure.
So the current pistols are just about 20 years old. They're currently a 40 caliber. So a couple of the justifications for the proposed change to the new pistol system are as follows. Recently, the FBI has recommended, based off of their research, that law enforcement agencies transition to 9mm pistols. There's some effectiveness issues as far as the delivery of the shot. But aside from that, 9mm ammo is generally cheaper. It's more readily available. The new system, the new pistol system, would have what's called red dot sights. So if you would imagine looking through the sight of a pistol and seeing a red laser at the point that the bullet would land, as opposed to not having that now, it's basically To give a good analogy, it looks like you're looking through goalposts of a football field and trying to line up sights. So it would improve officer accuracy as far as the placement of the shot. Certainly that translates into some liability exposures, because certainly you need to account for the placement of every single shot, including if it lands at an area that you don't want it to land. There's a body of research out there showing that the effectiveness and the accuracy of the officer's shot improves. So again, mitigating the risks of a shot being placed or landed in the location where you don't intend it to. Again, the improved officer accuracy, reduced costs of any remedial training, because the officers are generally experiencing better qualification training scores. And again, some of the other discussions that we had as far as the FBI's recommendation, availability of the ammunition, and the lower cost. Included, there would also be some revenue from sale of the current pistol assets. So some of that cost would be offset with the sale of the current pistols. So that's where we're at. You know, again, the weapon systems are 20-ish years old, give or take a year. So, you know, it's a conversation to start having.
Thank you.
It just occurred to me as you were speaking, Sergeant Hahn, that I think it's imperative that y'all have the proper tools to do the job, the proper guns to do the job, especially. But if you never, ever have to fire a shot, so much the better.
Okay, great discussion. I think we've all have learned a lot. So good job. I'm on page, I think I'm going to move down to 11 or 12 here. I need to get organized. Yeah, how about we start on page 11?
Yeah, 11's
Does that sound good?
The police starting at.
Let's move to 11. Let's move to fire rescue with some a good story going on here. For a long time, our borough has been providing funding to help replace future fire trucks. So last year we provided $90,000, and so the going forward is we will take this year's gift, or donation will be $90,000 at a 3.5 interest rate. So the total will be $93,150 to our fire company, and then each year it'll be 3% higher of that number. So it'll be 3% of $93,150, right? Is that correct? Okay. So this is great planning. I admire it. It helps us fund an expensive replacement, but it's essential, and we want to do that. So good work from prior councils to do that, also with the fire company. Okay, planning and zoning. We've allocated $40,000 there for the two entities. The comprehensive plan, Mary, we need to make sure we fund that, and then also Venture Lititz. Solid waste collection is our next item. It's on.
Can I jump back?
Yeah, I have a question on
Sure.
fire rescue, sorry.
Oh, on fire
Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I don't have anything to, go ahead.
What's the Fireman's Relief Fund? Remind me.
That's a reimbursement we get from the state that goes to the fire company.
Okay.
The state collects a tax on what they call foreign insurance policies. So that would be insurance companies that aren't located in Pennsylvania that write insurance policies in Pennsylvania. And then a certain portion of that is then distributed based on what percentage of the policies were in your fire district or your municipality. And so that money is given to you by the state, and you then are responsible for dispersing it to the fire company. In your case, it's super simple because there's only one fire company in Lititz. But for example, there's other municipalities, Warwick Township right next door. They have two fire companies. It's up to the municipality how they decide to disperse that. They could give it, in Warwick Township's case, they could give it all to one fire company. They could split it 50-50, which is what Warwick does. They could do a 12% and 88%, whatever formula they want. Again, for you guys, it's super simple. You're required, you have to give it to the fire company. And there's only one fire company. So for you guys, it's money in, money out.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Mary.
Couple of things, the tax incentive, I presume that that's the benefit that's provided to our volunteers? There's a 0 line item for 2024. I'm just curious, has that not been paid out to them or?
It was paid out. That's typically done in March or April. So I'm not sure what the issue is there. I know off the top of my head, we typically have, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 fire company members who live in the borough that apply for that. So I mean, I know there definitely was guys that did it this year and it was paid out.
It's probably just hasn't been coded yet, Mary.
Okay. All right. And then Mike, I have another question, if you can just stay up there, about the our WESC fee. It's $21,000 higher than it was in 2023. Just curious, how that escalator, I presume it's the same thing, we're splitting it equally with Warwick and Elizabeth.
Yeah, so the split is actually based on percentage of population. So if I remember correctly, it's like 19 for Elizabeth, 30 something for Lititz, and then just over 50 for Warwick. So I think the big jump there is because in 2024, two things happened. Number one, there was money budgeted for the deputy fire commissioner's position. Super great guy, by the way.
Yeah. Really.
I think I've
yeah. He did not start. I did not start until the second quarter of the year. So there was that money from the beginning of the year. And then the second thing was the fire commissioner. He ended up going out. He had a back injury and had surgery. And so he was out for roughly 2 to 3 months. And so disability picked up that portion. And so his salary also. So there was a huge balance from 2023 to 2024, which allowed that number to come down.
And when do we get our annual report from WESC? Is that coming up?
That will be after the first of the year.
Okay.
So yeah, we just made that change at the last WESC board meeting. We used to do it in October. That was what the directive was, but Dwayne and I recommended that we wait. We're essentially doing a report on half a year's worth of data. So we said, let's just do it at the beginning of the year and it'll be more context. Correct.
Okay. And Tanea is our liaison to WESC. So
That-
thank you, Tanea, for doing that. Yep. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, moving down on page 11 to 412 ambulance, you'll see a budget line there for 3 areas: workers' comp, our donation, and then the equipment purchase. Any questions there?
Nope.
Okay, moving on to the next page, 12, planning and zoning. This in the middle there, I'm just calling out the comp plan and the economic development there, the money that we give to Venture Lititz, and then our obligation for 25,000 for the comp plan.
Sorry, what page are we on?
Page 12.
Page 12.
Where's the comp plan you said?
Under
is
414 planning,
Venture Lititz.
and then it's right there at line 315.
Is that something for Venture Lititz we pay every year? We give them 15? That's just standard or what it's
Correct. Yeah,
been?
that's a
Okay.
donation that we give.
Okay.
In reality, that line item's coming down from the 55,000 and 24.
Well, and that covered the costs of the plan development.
Right.
Okay, moving on the same page down to solid waste collection, you'll see some line items there. I think that call your attention to the line number 452, contracted services. So the big number there is $1 million, but it's composed of 3 components. The hauler, the vehicles that pick up trash and take it down to the dump station in Lancaster is $716,000. The tipping station is where waste goes, and that's a county location that that takes the waste and then disposes of it or burns it or does something with it. And that's the Lackawanna. And they have increased their rates $2 per ton. And then we have the annual yard waste is 4,500. I don't think that changed, right, Rob?
As of right now, no, it hasn't.
It hasn't, right? Okay.
What is the Columbia Borough?
They're the ones that receive our yard waste. So
Oh, okay.
the craft
Just how
bags and
they-
sticks and stuff like, they have a spot that they accept that yard waste.
Okay.
Okay, we're on page 13. And we're looking at the highway general services categories there. You'll see that it covers the salaries and so forth for our public works team, and assumes a raise for them in 2025. You'll see that on the first line. I see that Andy, you are planning another part-time worker. That must have worked out so well last year. You're doing it again this year, right? So Andy was very busy with Front Street water line replacement, and he needed somebody to mow. And I guess that's what he's going to do, right? Okay, he or she, excuse me. Okay, but either could do it. Okay, moving down, we have, again, an ongoing project I'll call your attention to. It's miscellaneous expenses under 246. The public works guys are downtown repainting, sandblasting, repainting our trash cans. And I think you did half of them last year, and you're going to do the remaining half this year. Yep. Any tree planting going on downtown this year? No. I think last year it was, if I remember right, you had some trees to plant and trash cans. I must be dreaming. Okay, never mind. Okay.
So there's 3,400 trash cans in our.
No,
That's
that's
what I
the,
read.
$3,400.
$3,400.
Oh, I was
Yeah,
gonna say,
yeah.
holy cow, where are they at?
That's
Cause
a lot
I
of
don't
trash
see them. There's so many lines here.
And they're small too.
Kind of all
And they're
going
small.
together, right? Let me read all the words in that line.
Okay, so let's move on to page 14, Highway General Services. We have a number of items budgeted there. Some ongoing maintenance, a camera alarm system is requested by the team this year, right?
Mhm.
Okay, and then calling your attention down to the street reconstruction resurfacing. So Tanea, this is where we have put the paving number 462. And so one of our goals in the last few years is to dedicate paving resources and to put about 1.5 miles of new surface down to keep us in line with resurfacing our roads. This year it's 462, which is less than what we have normally done, and then that does not include a contingency. So we're at risk there with needing to get things done, but also balance the budget with a fund balance that works. So that's one of the categories that at preliminary look has taken a hit with what we would like to do. So
And it's just, I shared when Rob and I reviewed that. That concerns me just because we were fortunate this past year that we did not hit as many unknowns when we did the paving, but it's a wild card every year. We find some surprises there because right now you're looking at roughly the same amount we spent this year, roughly. We're looking at a budget of 462 where we spent 490 last year, but you're looking to pave half the amount. Is that
Okay.
the way I look at it? 0.75 instead of 1.5. So that could, you could find one surprise, suddenly have a couple $100,000 with no contingency to cover it.
right.
So we're hopeful maybe next year we can do
That's
a little more than what we're doing this.
I share
Excuse me.
I do. I think that that's a goal. That's a Borough Council goal, and from 2022 to dedicate resources for paving and take care of our streets. And so yes, I want to say yes to that, but I also say we have challenges, opportunities to solve here. So it's good that you know that. It's good that everybody knows that as we look at the wide range of cost lines that we all face. And we're going to be facing some tough decisions as we go forward.
So how does this, Tanea, how does this affect your plan that you presented at council some time ago about the street paving?
Guess
Right,
Andy's
that's-
gonna have to Come on up, tell us what you think you're gonna do now
Well, how
with
many
that.
miles were in that
Chop it in
report? How many?
We were over one and a half,
Yeah, we were closer to two.
almost, yeah.
Yeah, Andy can tell you, it's the two roads that we
Yeah,
talked
we're
about.
just doing two roads,
Which
my-
roads?
Cardinal and,
South Theater.
South Cedar. We'll have to do a whole new plan
Right,
and I have to know the dollar amount. That's what I went off of. That got cut enormous. So where do I go?
Yeah, the alternative is you're basically close to doubling that number, assuming doing this 462 gets us 0.75. So if we're going to do twice that, trust me, I mean, I think everybody wants to do it, but that's another $400,000 we got to figure out how to fit in the budget.
Yeah, I don't. For next year, I just need to know a figure, kind of
Right.
what to go off of. And what I gave Tanea, that's throw that out. Yep,
right,
like I told you,
right.
changes day to day.
You are right.
So,
And does that figure include Public Works doing most of the paving? Or is that contract?
It's always contract.
That'd be all contracted.
But you guys do a lot of base repair. There's money in there for base, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that contribution. Question?
I notice it says it doesn't include contingency or curb work, but doesn't the curb work come out of the stormwater fund?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not like we're not gonna do the curbs.
Now, I think there's 192,000 on the curbside, so we are,
The-
we'll just have to go to that fund.
The curb.
Correct.
There, if you go to the back of your general fund expenses,
Yeah.
there's a one sheet that breaks down the entire project where it's funded through. Hopefully it's in there. Hopefully I remember to put it there.
The contingency, Mary, when we put
Yep.
together the budget for that a couple years ago, I mean, the contingency was to cover all the prizes you obviously find below the surface. They start to repave it, all the antiquated infrastructure that we have below the pavement. But when they put that plan together a few years ago, what the contingency covers, that's really what concerns me. I mean, we find one bad pipe, we're doing something like that.
Okay,
Okay, still on page 14, moving through highway, streets, lighting and signals. We moved the electricity for the streetlights to the highway aid fund. So that's why there's a zero there. Otherwise it would have been there. Moving down to curbs and sidewalks, you see the numbers there. Parking facilities, what those numbers represent is parking meter supplies that Chief just mentioned. We have some materials that we need. And then the 866 is the monthly fee for the software that Chris mentioned for having it digital where we can do credit cards. So it allows for that payment there. So that's what we pay. Okay, moving on over here to Culture and Recreation Administration. So I'm going to pause here. We're going to talk about this. These are all of the funding that the borough provides to some of our neighbors here. A regional recreation comp is one that we give. That's 19.2. The rec center has a contribution there of 39, and then the capital contribution to the pool is 10, and that's a 10-year agreement. So these are all things that we're currently doing and have done. However, I think we want to have a discussion about that tonight. And so I have other things to add, but I'm going to yield the floor to Mary. She'd like to share some information, I think.
yeah, Tanae and I both serve on the Warwick Regional Rec Commission, and it's come to both of our attention that the fees that are being collected from the member municipalities exceed the expenses of the services that they're providing. And I would like to suggest that we entertain a renegotiation of those fees to assist with balancing our budget. There's also a revenue source that I'd like to suggest, and Tanea and I have discussed this. We currently do not have our park, what do you call it?
The Lions Park?
Pavilions. We do not have our pavilions listed for rental on the Warwick Regional through the Warwick Regional Rec Commission as the other municipalities do, which means that we're not getting any income for those. And they're basically being used on a first come, first served basis, which can make it a little challenging if you want to plan ahead to have some type of an event there. You plan it with your family and you all show up and somebody else is there before you. So Danae and I have talked about it, and we'd like to suggest that we begin listing our pavilion at the Spruce Street Park for rental through WESC. It is a service, or through the Warwick Regional Rec Commission. It is a service we're providing, where we are paying for, but not using.
And they'll take care of it for us.
They'll take care of all we have to do is get the facility listed, and then they handle the registration and all of that for us. So we think that's an opportunity for a little bit of additional income. Obviously, there are going to be people who are upset about that. I'm sure you can go out and use the facility if nobody's there and without paying for it. But if you want to reserve it, you'll need to pay for it. So a little bit of income there, and also renegotiation of the fee that we are paying that will be more in line with a balanced budget for the Regional Rec Commission, unless they are able to present that there are valid uses of the funds that they are accruing.
Hey, Mary, I'm curious. So we have 3 line items there. Is there a
Yes.
particular line item that you're speaking to? Is it the
Yeah,
top one?
315 would be the Regional Rec Commission. That 19,200 is the fee that I would suggest we renegotiate. I also have a question about the contribution to the rec center, and I don't know the history. On what basis are we contributing to the rec commission? I think of it as a community service, however, it is a fee for service facility. It's not like our library that is free to anybody to use. And so I would like to have a little bit more information about why we're contributing to the rec center. I'm a little uncomfortable with that when we're having trouble balancing our budget.
Which municipalities, we're not the only one.
No, it'd be Elizabeth and Warwick Township and Borough, and I think maybe
I think
Manheim some, well, yeah.
I think it's multiple.
Yeah, there's multiple.
Amount.
Yeah.
I remember there was a discussion about this.
I don't have that
how
amount.
many years
No.
ago.
No.
We looked at all the different municipalities.
And I guess the question would be, what are we getting for that contribution? Is there, I know that I was just looking at the website today, and you know, in order to get a membership there, I would have to pay a monthly fee. And they do have provisions for people who need financial assistance. Perhaps if this funding were going towards supporting that and communities, families of need in the community to be able to access that. But if it's simply subsidizing a membership fee in the community and we're having to raise taxes because we can't balance our budget, I have a real concern with that. So
I know one of the advantages we have paying this amount is that we can get some discount memberships for police officers and fire volunteers who use the facility. I don't know how many of those people do that, but we're considered like a partner or something. It's a category when we contribute to the.
Employer.
Yeah, like an
They
employee,
are
like, yeah,
employee.
like an
They
employer.
have
So,
grants for like
so-
Warwick School District.
yeah,
There's a lot
so
of-
we get.
I think
some
the other thing to
reductions
look
there.
at is if you compare that rate that you were looking at to others, it's considerably different. I think that's the other value to the community. And just, I mean, I know Jerry and I both go there regularly, and it becomes I'll say a hub for the youth. Also the community, I think it's a community asset beyond that.
Yeah,
I think
It
it's probably
but
why.
it's not an asset that is available to everyone
Mhm.
as a park is.
Except I think they're trying to do better with that. They have this partnership program that they raise money for underserved youth to come to the rec center after school for activities. I think the rec center is trying to reach out to our community in a different way. And I think the rec center is one of our unique resources to our community that make our community unique. And I would, I would have some difficulty seeing us reduce our membership there. I think that's a community partner that's important to us, and I think it's a good use of our funds.
And I think it's
and-
almost
and-
we're almost,
May I just
Yeah.
say something quick? In regard to free, where people can go, they have the basketball court that's outside that has lights that people can use all the time for no charge. Plus, they supervise and keep an eye on the skate park.
and there is playgrounds out there too. I'd think the other thing, it's a fortunate with the locale of it that it's like right within, it's kind of part of our school district campus. If you're ever over there right around 3:00, 3:30, like I said, I think it helps a lot of families who can't pick their kids up at 3:00. And I know you'll see a train of kids going over there from the middle school. So I'm kind of in the vein of Jerry. I would be hard pressed to reduce that because it is a community asset much more than, and yes, it is paid. But I'll say if you compare that to some of the other gyms you could go to, it's not near the same amount.
I just need justification. Thank you.
And the rec center is very well run. It's a good professional organization. I sit on that board, and the finances are scrutinized, and I think they work hard at keeping their costs reasonable. So our community can support it. So, yeah.
And if I can jump in, I know at least I believe the contribution to the rec center was done by agreement, and that agreement was renewed last year or late 22. And I think it was a 5-year term for those contributions. I believe WRC has something similar. I'm happy to pull those to get those dates for
Yeah, it
you.
might have been close to when we also negotiated them taking over the pool because that was also a management cost reduction for us. Say, you guys will be better to manage the pool. So that was part of that contract negotiation too, because the pool used to be our responsibility.
And that was another question. So who does own the pool?
The borough technically owns the pool.
Okay.
In fact, the rec center's property is borough property. They essentially have a long-term lease. So we don't own their facility, but we own the property. That's why part of that contribution covers the stormwater fee that they pay, because essentially they're paying a stormwater fee on their water, sewer, trash bill. That's for our property. So part of that is a reimbursement. For all intents and purposes, the rec center controls the pool at this point and
So they
manage.
get all the revenue,
And they put it into a capital fund, and that's one thing that they do review as part of the WRRC or the partners meetings, I believe the WRRC partners meetings.
so the 10,000 we give them every year, it says for 10 years. What is that?
That's
That's
essentially
still-
going into that capital fund for future repairs. And then once those 10 years are up, which I think is around 29,
Okay.
then our obligation for that contribution ends.
Do we pay for chemicals for the pool? Do we pay for anything like that? That's all on.
That's all on them at this
Okay.
point.
It used to be
Yeah.
on us.
I
That was
thought
part
so.
of the offloading of
And we
that.
used to get a discount.
We used to get a discount, and we used to be able to watch the fireworks from
I know, and
From
now
in
we
there.
can't.
But no, we don't. And that's actually was one of the things that was in the agreement with them taking it over, which goes back to like 14 or 15, was that was to continue until essentially they do the rehab project, which is now behind us.
Okay,
All right, Ken, you want to move
All
on?
very helpful. Thank you.
thank you, yes.
Okay, Steve, in that category, I think it's just appropriate to take 2 seconds here and inform our council, and we have some new members about some of the other donations that the borough is very generous in. So we talked about the Lititz Fire Company. We've been doing that. We talked about it previously. We do have a per capita donation that we give to the library, and that's set at $56,000.
Where are we at with that?
Which line item are you on?
Page you on?
I'm sharing information that you don't have.
Oh,
Okay.
That's why I'm
It's on page 15. Number,
okay.
it's under the.
Yeah,
group
you do have
456
item
libraries.
540 as donation.
But
to
I was trying to
library.
couple it where Mary was. Okay, and then Lititz Springs Park is $10,000 we give each year. The Warwick Ambulance, I have it at 11,000, and then the rec center, as we just mentioned. So these are some areas that we're generous. I think it's important that everybody know that. I think it's important that we continue to look at that and see how we can continue to be generous to these entities.
And I'll
Yes.
just add for the parks contribution of the $10,000, that is tied with the summer playground program. There was some discussion about contribution, and for as long as I've been here, that line item has been together. So I viewed that contribution as being contingent upon them hosting the summer playground program at the pavilion there. It is run by the Rec Center WRRC, but essentially that is a facility fee, what I would view that as.
Thank you, Elijah.
And let's go on to parks there. I'm just looking,
Okay.
we're 2 hours deep and we're not even through the second
Okay.
packet yet.
I can jump in there. Let's take a look at the parks. We have most of this is maintenance and upkeep that's going on, but there's 3 items that I want to call your attention to, and that was let me get caught up here. The New Street, we need to resurface the basketball court. We've delayed that, I think, 2 years. So that's on this particular budget. War Memorial, we're planning to do some old tree removal and some new signage. It's in the budget. And then a recommendation from the park committee is to purchase some tags that identify tree species, and it can be used as an educational tool for some of the unique maples and oaks that we have in our community. So that's the highlights of what the park is. Any questions?
What is wood carpet?
That's mulch. Okay. You see what we've budgeted for shade trees and maintenance and reimbursements. Moving on to libraries, there's the per capita that I was just mentioning. Next is our debt principal. So these are the numbers that you heard from me earlier about retiring the principal and interest for the 2020 note. So you see those numbers there.
Ken, can we pause there for a second?
Sure.
And let Rob speak to that quickly?
And I am going to turn it over. We're going to have another big discussion. It's in nice golden letters right here.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring to council's attention the 2 forms of debt we have. One is the 2020 note, which paid for the police garage construction and renovations out of Public Works. You'll see that numbers there for 2024. The other debt we have is the GO bond of 2023. Specifically in that column for 2024 estimated end, we're going to need to add in the GO bond payment for 2024. That's roughly $260,000. So that will increase, based on what you have in front of you, it's going to increase all your end of year expenses by $260,000 and decrease the fund balance by 2%. Long story short, the GO bond needs to be paid for out of the general fund and not out of the capital improvement fund. That was caught by Waltz Group and Brown Plus when we were looking at our October financials. So that move will happen here before the end of the year. It'll just be a coding. But just so everyone understands, 2 major debts out of the general fund, the 2020 note and the GO bond from 2023.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. Moving down on page 16 to line item 487, employee benefits. This was mentioned at the October meeting. I reported the municipal minimum obligations for non-uniform pension plan, and that was at $196,000. And then for the minimum obligation pension plan for the police, it was 302. And that you'll see is right in there.
What's the difference in that jump from 23 at 219? Just increase in.
We have some actuaries that prepare these numbers for us, and they look at our pension plan and they look at the how to take care of them, and they advise us on that amount. I can't tell you tonight exactly the difference, but I know we have talented people that keep us in tip-top shape with our pensions.
It's the salary increases for 24
That
and
makes it.
23. Yep.
Thank you, Rob.
Mhm.
Okay, moving down. Where are we? Page 16. I'm in the interfund transfers. And so one that hasn't been talked about yet is the Green Light Go of $51,000. And so that's being moved over to the Highway Aid Fund, and where we have some signal projects. We'll see about that a little later. Right. Okay. Moving out of the general fund into the capital improvement fund. We've just talked about this. We have $618,000. I highlighted it earlier. I can do it again. What's your appetite? You want to go through this again, or?
I mean, this is the one, we talked enough at this one. I think this
Okay.
is where we have to make a decision on that additional 95,000.
Correct. Okay. So moving to page 17, this is where we look at the expenses and the revenue and come up with the fund balance percentage. So 2025, we'll start the year out at 3.4. We're planning revenue of 8.7. We're planning expenses at 9.3. Our end of year balance will be 2.8, and we're planning an annual recap of a negative $608,000. This puts us at a fund balance of, for 2025, estimated at 30%.
And keep in mind, Rob just told us that our expenses are going to go up 200,000 and the fund balance is going to come down 2%.
So didn't we think, I think this is right, isn't 1% about $100,000? So we're going to be down to 28%, roughly estimated. Okay. One of the things that finance has done in the last 2 years is that we like to put the projects at the tail end of the fund. So you'll see the paving project. It gives you some nice details about how it's funded, what the work is going to be done and where, and how much it costs, and who is the leader. So Andy is our project manager for this paving project that you see.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Cam. Which one of the next ones do you want to get?
Steve, I think the next one is going to be in order. It's going to be the park fund. The only thing to point out here is that finance recognized that we ought to put some of the resources that we have to work with high interest rates. So we put $83,000 into a CD that we opened in this year, and that we are projecting interest earnings to continue at about $3,900, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And there was no planned expenses in this fund for next year. Okay.
Just a question for the 6th Street, Locust Street Park. We budgeted $187,000 in 2024, but only ended up spending $15,000. What was the reason for that?
That's just where the cost came in. It's actually the two line items. It's the 10,000 right above it, and then the 15. But those are just our actual expenses there for the park.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, we're moving on to the water fund. Let's see. So the water fund is next. And this is one of our enterprise funds. This is where all of the total direct and indirect costs to provide the service for the water is transacted. So some of our goals for this year is to, is really to continue the water main replacement on Front Street and the meter pit. We're, also looking to replace the west main, get an opinion and a engineering for the west main, replacement. We're looking to do some other work out at the water treatment plant. You'll see that listed there in the goals of our team there. Revenue is primarily going to come in from these sources. So interest you have there, you have what Warwick Township pays for the water that we provide for them. You have some of the lateral tapping fees that come in. You have sale to customers. That's the borough, is the customers there, and that generates that $1.9 million in revenue.
Can that $600,000 for the Warwick Township Municipal Authority, you said about they would be potentially could be filling their tank. What was that? Would that bring in? I know we don't have that on here, but what do you?
That's a great
estimate?
question.
I'm
And
just curious.
can you tell me how many gallons are in there?
It's a
the
half a
guess
million,
would be
500,000 gallons. I don't know the rate off the top of my head. It'd be significant,
okay,
a significant dollar amount. I just don't know if it's going to happen in 25 or 26.
but it may potentially happen in the next. Well,
But it's got to happen. Yeah, they've
Hap-
approved the project. They've already done infrastructure work.
at
so
least in the next 2 years.
I would think so. Yeah,
Okay,
it's fair.
all right.
So as of now, it's not in there.
Right.
Okay, when we move down to expenses, you're going to see something that's familiar to all of you. This is the contract services that are provided by Infomart for our water treatment plant. So you'll see that in that we highlighted, we had a recent question about PFAS, and so we do have $11,000 set aside for monitoring PFAS. So we're prepared for that, and we're equipping our team to do that. In additional, there's expenses on the next page. I'm on page 20, and you'll see a list of expenses that come into operating the facilities. Down at the bottom, you're going to see one of our big projects. That's why Andy had to get a part-time mower, is he's going to be out putting in additional water main replacement on Front Street. So they're going to tackle this. We have it budgeted for $878,000. Okay. Total. Front Street is a portion of that. We also have the Norfolk Southern water main line to go underneath the railroad. And we also have some capital projects that Infomark is going to want to provide for us. They've listed out in the capital scorecard. So it's a big number. I think it's important that we stop here just for a second and we have a discussion about how we can maybe save the borough some money, but we all have to be aware of that. And so on Front Street, Mary and I had the opportunity to look at the budget for the water main replacement, and Andy and his team volunteered that if they do it, they can do a great job. They can save us some money, but it's going to take them 2 years instead of 1. Right now, we're planning on having it done at the end of next year and then start some paving. So the impact would be, it would be 2 years to do it, and then we would be done at the end of 2026, and we really wouldn't be able to pave until 2027 for those.
How much is the savings?
$300,000.
It's significant. And
Now, Annie
it's
is,
going to take 2 years. It'll stretch over 2025 and 2026, but it's not going to be construction for 2 years, right? The construction will stretch out between 2025 and 2026, but it's not like they're going to be under construction for 2 whole years. Is that correct?
Like the road won't be
Oh.
closed for 2 full years.
Yeah,
It's uncertain until you get underneath.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that the public understands that this is the trade-off that we're making, is that takes a little bit more time, but we can do it cheaper for less money with our own local crew.
I would hope we could try and get it done in 1 year, but if we can't,
You can't.
depends. Yeah.
But are you saying that road would have to be closed the entire year?
I would probably like from Locust to
Portions of
Elm.
it.
Yeah.
Just
We
like
would
you've been
split it,
doing
yeah.
recent, the working
We'd split
recently.
it up.
Brian.
How am I going to get my kid to school then?
Go round.
Ah,
No. We can, but I don't like to leave steel plates open like over winter time.
Mhm.
I think we could get it all done. We have to work with the other contractors.
So the 300 less is comparing to,
I think that 200, you have 200,000 in, that was just for material.
yeah, 200,000. Okay, so
mean,
is
we're
that
here the
savings
rest of the
in
month.
this total 878 number now or not? You're saying that 878 would reduce by 300?
No, 878 is your hard number. The proposal we received just for the front street was $830,000.
Okay, so
what
this
that-
number would go up by 300,000.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what we have in the budget right now is
It's what
us
them
doing
do.
it.
That's correct.
Like I said, I would hope that would be my goal to get it done next year. It depends.
You
what
said that was
else- other stuff comes
870,000,
up.
so that number's going up by 600,000 or more. If this is just the materials.
No, 878, that's your hard number. We do it in-house over
Okay.
2 years, 1 year. That's
I
your
thought
number.
you said the contracted number was like 800,000 to do it.
Yeah, but you don't see that here.
So all we're carrying is the 200,000 plus our own labor to do it.
Mhm.
Like I said, we would do our best to try and get it done next
Okay.
year. That's all I can say on that.
Yeah,
I
so-
think we can, but we start early enough.
Okay.
So Steve, that 878, if I'm understanding this correctly, it is to hire a contractor to do the water main that requires the stream crossing.
Yeah, the 878 includes each of those lines. It's a
It-
304 for the street. It's a 135 for the Norfolk Southern. It's a 200 for the materials on Front Street and the 138 of the Infomark.
Right.
What I thought I heard them say was if we were to contract out just that work, it was $800,000. And that was where I was trying to do the math. I was taking away the
It would
200,000
probably
of
be
the,
another 600,000 on top of this
Yeah.
878 then.
right. That's kind of what I'm saying. If the contracted number was 800, we have 200 materials different to 600.
Yes.
So I guess I'd like to weigh in. Andy, if you think it's possible for you to do it, I'd like to know what the difference is. So if it means a small amount of money to bridge that gap to get it down to 1 year, what would that look like? Is there a specific function that we could have on reserve and pull in if needed instead of waiting another year? Is there something that, like, as you get into the project, there can be a resource that could help you finish if you need it?
Yeah. Yeah. I think to your question, Ken, there's nothing that's going to speed them up to do it. I mean, what's going to slow them down are the surprises. I mean, Andy's probably saying, yeah, we can get it done in a year if I have no surprises. So he's being a little conservative, knowing he's going to find some surprises. It's going to probably be more than a year.
Or if there's sorry, go ahead.
Right. You're going to find stuff that you aren't aware that's below the surface, which will slow you down. And you can throw 20 more men on it. That doesn't.
Or there
expedite
could
it.
be things that happen in other areas that draw your men away, your people away and keep you from working on that. A water main break somewhere else or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, it makes sense to me.
Is there a certain
think-
time you're going to do this? Is there a certain time you can work on this or you can work on this the whole way through?
Start when the snow's gone and go as long as you can.
And just to add one other positive to this, when Andy's doing this, it also includes the galvanized lines, service lines there.
Okay.
Maybe half a dozen or so, but yeah, so it's another benefit to the community by Andy doing that and helping the people.
All right, Ken.
Okay.
Let's continue.
Moving on to 502 on page 20 with water distribution. Just noticed there's some extra meter testing investments being purchased. And I think one of those is to help monitor the water out of the north water tank that we'll be sharing or providing for the Warwick Township. Moving on, you can see the last page, page 21. We have just a management fee there, and then we're finished. We plan on total expenses coming in there at 2.6 mil. So the beginning balance for next year looks like 3.1, net income of 1.9, net expenses at 2.6 with a end of year balance of 2.3, leaving us with a annual recap of minus 761.
The biggest difference takes the 1.8 budget in 24 to the 2.6 now is that 800,000 that we just talked about.
And
Okay.
is this the one that we're working on a fund balance policy for the water fund during 2025, like we have for the general fund?
Yep. So in October, we did report that we had the fees reexamined, and I just restating that we did that, and then also to we're in great financial shape. We are in the lowest area of rates on the sample size or the sample customers that were tested. We have strong cash reserves, and we're recommending that we do not raise the water rate for 2025. However, our next step is to look at the future and to see what our capital needs are and to assign a new rate that accounts for that. So there will be a lot of work done on that, and we will be looking at our fund balances in these funds and setting up a fund balance policy like we have in the general fund. Okay.
When did we last raise our water?
2018 was the last raise. And that'll be the same for the sewer, which is next. So the sewer fund is next. Lots of good projects and goals planned for the sewer category. A solids conveyor, we've talked about that. I think it's a great idea for the wastewater treatment plant to have that. We're going to be doing some manhole replacements. We're also going to be taking some efforts to address some areas of concern with our hazard mitigation plan. And we will always be working on investigating I&I in our system, inflow and infiltration, to make our sewer system more efficient. Our revenue comes from interest, sewer permits and trapping fees, sewer customers. We have a pre-treatment agreement over at J&J, which is an income for us. And then we also service the Warwick Township. That gives us those income lines that you see.
And I just asked that J&J McNeil gets updated to the current customer name.
Yep, I can do that.
Thank you.
So expenses coming through there. We have engineering, as you would think, since we have lots of projects. The collection, what did I want to talk about?
You got 293. Got a big line there.
Yeah, I think this and that particular budget item, I was just calling out what I already mentioned, manholes, Steve, or 200,000, and the new sewer machine at 4,500 are in there.
Boy, manholes are not cheap.
These ones are buried manholes that are onto the interceptor going out towards the plant. So they need to be fully reconstructed. I believe they're brick, and they're totally buried in the floodplain at this point.
Oh.
So it's essentially going down, rebuilding up with a concrete collar and reinforcing it.
Are there grant funds potentially available for that?
That's covered with ARPA.
This is ARPA.
Okay.
County ARPA.
Okay, moving further down. I'm moving over to 23, page 23, if you like. Our contracted services, that should look familiar with Infomark serving in that capacity. Moving into administration. Some of their costs are listed out there. Moving through 23 and on to 24. You see our total expenses are coming in at 4.3 million. The fund balance for next year will begin at 3.9 million. Net income will be 4.2 million. Net expenses come in at 4.3 million. We will retain a end of year net balance of 3.8 million, but we'll have an annual recap of a minus $136,000.
Halfway point. You're almost there, Ken.
All right. The General Capital Improvement Fund is next. So let's get that lined up. Okay, so this is where all the revenue and the expenses that we record in this fund for the items that meet the definition and criteria of our capital policy. So this is where it is. Some of the goals that we have in here, we've talked about tonight. I'll be brief. We have the HVAC, the manholes 6 and 7, the Norfolk Southern runabout line. Axon payment is an obligation we have each year. The purchase of the leaf vac and leaf boxes is in this category, and then the go bond principal and interest is in this category. We drive revenue from interest earnings and from grants. Private contributions are all listed there. The RAC grant is earmarked there. It's a reimbursement. We won't see that reimbursement until we start developing the rail trail, I believe. Right. And then we do have some private contributions from Oak Tree Management to help contribute to the rail trail of 16,000 plus over a 3-year period each year. We fund it through some transfers from the general fund. We have $618,000, and that 618 we've talked about tonight. It covers the go bond payment, the 50,000 Axon payment, 238,000 for the HVAC Borough Hall, and $62,000 to outfit the dump truck equipment that we've purchased. So there's where the revenue is. You'll see the expenses listed. You'll see the same thing back in those amounts that I just identified. So we need to sort that out. Any further questions for the Capital Improvement Fund? Okay, hearing none, I'm moving over to the Storm Drainage Fund. Our goals here are to replace the curbs and drains and ADA ramps when needed when we do paving projects. Also like to use funds here to help televise and look into the storm water pipes to look for possible breaks and repairs. Revenue comes from interest earnings and stormwater fees. You'll see that total up to $526,000. Our expenses for this year recognize engineering services, maintenance and repair. We've got the construction costs for curbs and ramps for the Cardinal and Cedar Street paving projects that Andy's going to be leading. And then that continues down to the interfund transfers, where you recognize the 148 being transferred, where we will expense the curbs and ramps for the paving. You follow me, Tanea? Okay. So in 2025, we're planning on having a balance of $737,000. Net income will come in at $526,000. Net expenses at $327,000 for an end of year balance of $935,000, and we'll have an annual positive recap of $198,000. Okay, I'm looking at 3 funds to review. The Water Construction Fund is next. And this will just be where we recognize the revenue and the expenses for the Front Street water main replacement, as well as the water line replacement under the Norfolk Southern rail line. This is where we just recognize it, okay? Nothing new here. So this is how we recognize it. Moving out of that fund into the Highway Aid Fund. The big 2 projects are the signal improvements on 6th and Broad and 2nd and Broad. Elijah has been our champion for several years on this project, and continues to lead us and push us forward. We do have revenue earnings there of interest and grants and liquid fuels that come in from our state. We also have a transfer from the general fund to help us with this revenue that's needed. Expenses can be seen as you look through snow and ice removal, highway signs and marketing, and some of this costs recognized by the Green Light Go project that we're hoping to do. So that brings us to page 34, and we've have some money set aside for road and bridge repair. That's going to actually work on crosswalk curb and taping, I guess, by Andy and his team. So bringing this to a close, expenses will total $435,000. Now, when we look at the fund balance, we start out at $41,000. With net income, it'll take us to $445,000. Net expenses come in at $435,000. We'll have an end of year balance of $51,000 and a positive annual recap of $9,000. Please take a moment to look at some of the projects. This is a new improvement. We like for all of council to get some of the high level details on each project, and it's right at the end.
Can you just explain what the street lighting 361 for $170,000? What does that entail?
So we
On
moved.
Page 33.
We moved paying for the electricity for streetlights out of the general fund and moved it into the highway aid fund.
Okay.
And that just pays for all the electricity for all of our streetlights.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. And then finally, we have the police contribution special revenue fund. This is managed by the police department. And so they do some great work with interest earnings, private contributions for the K-9 units, contributions from night out. And so they've done a great job accumulating funds each year. And then they use those funds to help in our community, support our K-9, do community outreach, and really make some strong connections with all of our citizens. And I think it's great work that they do. Beginning balance will be at $35,000. Net income this year planned is $5,000. Net expenses are planned at $11,000. End of year net balance will be at $29,000, and an annual recap will be a minus $6,000. So this brings us to the final fund. I would like to say and just remind everybody that on December 10th, Tuesday evening, 7 o'clock, we'll be right here for public question and answer. And we have a lot of work to do.
Great work, Ken. That's a lot of effort, a lot of work into that. I've got the confidence you've got an understanding about each of those items as you went through there. So really good work. Each of you, you contributed to some of the work that Ken put in with that, and Rob and Elijah and everybody.
Hey, Steve, just to speak of that, everybody in this room actually has helped me. We've recognized some challenges. I've called on Andy, I've called on Kerry and his team. We've had some Zoom calls as we've tried to squeeze this budget together. So, and each council person has participated in a review, which is great. And then, of course, our staff, our talented staff, Elijah and Rob and their teams have contributed.
So just walk me through the additional steps in the timeline. So the December 10th is public comment regarding any of the conversation or any of the items because they have access to this now.
Yeah, so that's a great question. We would like to come to council.
They will after this.
There's been a lot of questions tonight, and I think the first step is to try to get as much done for council meeting in November. So that'll be the first re-reporting, Steve, and we can report to you before, but I think we have some opportunities to clear up some things and answer some questions. Then I think that would prepare myself and the finance team to be ready for a public Q&A on December 10th. It's a Tuesday, second Tuesday at 7 o'clock.
Okay, so the next council meeting is in 2 weeks.
And then we go to approval in December, and then we publish the budget at that time. Now, keep in mind, Steve, that the council is 1 week after the public meeting. It's a compressed December.
Yeah, it's the 17th.
And just to add on to that, at the November meeting, you'll vote to advertise the draft budget for public review. An ad will go in the paper. It'll be available downstairs for review and online.
Okay.
And then that'll be available to the public going into that December 10th meeting. That's kind of the last chance to have any kind of feedback and make any kind of changes. Then December 17th is when you'll need to vote on adopting a final budget.
Steve, I have a couple of things that I just want to bring up real quickly that I'd like us to think about for the future. One is solar. When I look at the energy costs in the budget, I wonder how solar could benefit us. I mean, we see through the building permit requests, a lot of people getting solar here in the borough. I've gotten a quote myself, and honestly, it's like they'll come install it for free and I'll get money back. I really think we need to take a hard look at the potential for solar to help offset some of our expenses in the future. We have a challenge here in that we have an ordinance that prohibits solar within the historic district. This came up at the Historic Area Advisory Committee for the workshop between zoning and planning last week. And I think we need to take a look at that and see if that's a place where we could find some savings. The other thing I wonder about is the insurance numbers concern me, and I just wonder how long it's been since we've gotten competitive quotes on our insurance. So just those two comments.
Okay. Any other comments, council?
I guess, Steve, it's me. How do I reconcile what I believe to be some capital request? How do we, do you want me to try to put up some type of matrix? We're going to have to make some decisions. I can put up a whole matrix of decisions because we can't do everything.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there was a series of items in there. Yeah, if you can put those together and just say, I would say there's a handful. There's, in my head, 6 to 10 items in there that we got to make a decision on. You had a line on them, might have 3 or 4 things in it, but in my head, there's anywhere from between 6 to 10 things that we have to make a decision for, before we finally approve something in December. I mean, we'll have to have discussions based on what we're going to publish after the meeting in 2 weeks. So if you can put that together and just bullet point those, I think.
Steve, do you want, should comment coming from you and others? Because, it's how do we frame it? I guess
I would say put those line items together, share that out with everybody, and then we got to have comments on that by the next meeting. I would say everybody has to make a decision on what we're going to publish after that meeting.
Okay.
Or are you thinking we have to have that before that meeting, because that meeting we're going to be voting on what we're going to be publishing?
I mean, you can have a discussion at the meeting.
Okay.
That at the end of this month.
Yeah,
And then depending on whatever you agree changes in that, then you can vote to advertise that.
Advertise those changes. So if
Correct.
we say, hey, I'm generically saying this, out of these 10 line items that Ken gave us, we're going to say include these 6 or don't include these 6.
Correct. And that goes out for public review. It can still be changed in between the advertisement and the actual adoption period.
So I know it's asking more, Ken, but if you can take, and you have it within here, but if you can summarize it to those, I'm generically saying those 10 items and say, guys, we need to make a decision on these 10 items. Are they in or are they out?
But just so I'm clear, because I'm doing a lot of it with you. Are we talking about the capital?
I think we're talking about capital.
Yeah, the
capital.
I'll take the one that sticks in my head. I remember that during the police there, they had $115,000 worth of things. We have to figure out that. There was others that went through over the last 2.5 hours that had that.
I don't want to overstep my bounds, but I think I have to say this. If you're going to think about increasing expenses, I'd encourage council to rethink about all the cuts we did to get where we're at.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So I don't know how,
That was how I would respond. I would show you that, Steve.
So basically, I guess what you're saying, those, yeah, I'm saying this in general terms, those
Yeah.
10 items are not in here right now.
The ones on the capital that were added, they're
Yeah,
not. Correct.
right.
What I put in there was just what our obligations were, basically, what we have to do.
So I think all I'm saying, Rob, is summarize everything and say, hey, guys, everybody needs to understand these 10 items are not in the current budget. These capital items.
Right, and Rob's saying in addition, probably list out the ones that were cut.
That we
So
already
that-
cut.
That you
Yeah,
already
I mean,
cut to
an
get to
example
this
is we
budget
cut
that we
$500,000
presented.
out of the paving.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. With the extra $200,000 payment that's going to come out of general, that's going to now be in as an expense. So that's going to be
yeah,
that's going to affect our fund balance.
yeah, I mean, if you're going to increase expenses, your fund balance is going to go down quickly when you're talking about the amount of paving that we cut and the additional capital requests. I mean, if you put back in paving and the capital, your fund balance is going to be down quickly, very quickly. Right now, you're at 28%, which is
I'm
decent.
not suggesting it goes back. I think there was some discussion early on with the chief. We got to make sure we understand we have the right numbers in there with that too.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
I'll give you a draft sooner as opposed to later.
Okay. All right. No other comments here. I guess now it's time to open up if there are any comments from the public. And if you have, please come up to the mic and Ken will hand it to you. State your name.
Thank you. My name is Jillian Keith and I live at 771 Callard Drive in Lititz. I really appreciate how transparent and thorough this budget has been tonight. But I do have a comment about the budget as it pertains to the police department. In borough meetings I have attended, it has been proposed that funds be diverted away from the police force. I have two children, ages 5 and 3, and have lived in Lititz since they were babies. As a young mother, our town's public, family-friendly places, such as our parks, are a huge resource to raising children, and the police help protect these areas. My daughter's favorite playground is 6th Street Park, and for her 5th birthday this summer, she wanted to celebrate there. What should have been a wonderful day celebrating the birth of my child was disturbingly interrupted when a man began circling the playground in his car, stopping to repeatedly and pointedly photograph the children on the playground, only to speed off in his car whenever a parent attempted to approach him. This went on for quite some time and was obviously distressing to the families at the playground. My husband and I were finally able to speak to him when he got out of his car across from the park. When he did, he began screaming that he would do exactly as he pleased and continued to photograph the children. At this point, we called the police and the man drove off in his car. The officers arrived and remained nearby for safety for the duration of my daughter's birthday party. Disturbing as this day was, we soon realized that this was far from the only incident of this man screaming at and intimidating families on the playground, and the behavior was brought to the borough's attention. At least 3 separate occurrences of this type by this man at 6th Street Park were reported, and letters written by those families expressing their fear were read at the July borough meeting. At the same meeting, the borough issued a statement condemning such behavior and recommended citizens call the police when it occurs. At least one of these incidences resulted in the police pressing harassment charges, which he has spent the last few months navigating in court. It was realized that the man, later identified as David Carson, has protested the idea of the park since its conception and is now proposing altering the budget of the police who have had to protect it. David Carson has refused to take accountability for his behavior and has neither publicly nor privately apologized to any of the families for his actions. He has, however, expressed repeatedly a desire to continue treating parkgoers as he chooses. He has proposed altering the budget of the police force, which would conveniently empower him to do so. It is my desire that the park would remain a safe place for families. And because of this, I believe it would be unwise for our city to follow calls of altering the police force given by someone who they currently have to protect us from. Thank you.
Jillian, thank you. Obviously, I know it's uncomfortable to have those conversations and get up in the public and have those, and we do appreciate your comments, and we continue to monitor situations like that at the park. So appreciate your courage in getting up and speaking. Any other comments from the public in the room? Or I ask Rob for public online. If not, Rob, public online.
Yeah, we've got, I think David Carson twice, and then Karen had a question. So David was first, so I'll unmute him.
Hello, can you hear me?
We hear you. Go ahead, David.
So this is David Carpenter calling, and first off, the previous caller has nothing to do with the budget. So Steve, you should have followed your rules and not let her speak. Number two, her fantasy was, it was a fantasy of what she said, and it's a character assassination, will be dealt with further. Number three, there were charges brought against me for harassment, as she said, but she failed to state that I was was found not guilty. My charge was dismissed within a 7-minute hearing. So what she said was untrue. Okay, the borough brought charges against me that violated my First Amendment, as it was a malicious prosecution, which will also be met with further action. So that addresses that. I don't need to address it any further. She's in fantasy land. And about the budget, since she's not been around enough, I brought this up last year, at least a year and a half ago, why Warwick Township spends $675,000 less for their police service than Lititz Borough does. So it's not a new crusade, as she may say it. Well, all I heard tonight was costs that are going to be borne by the taxpayers. Not anything about cost containment. It's all about the Lititz Borough team or capital purchases, all of those things. So, you know, Miss Keith needs to go back and think about what she said tonight, because it's all recorded now. It's very character assassination and untrue. Like I said, look it up. David Carson was found not guilty of harassment. I didn't even have to put a defense on. The case was dismissed in 7 minutes at the hearing. The police brought a charge that should never have been brought. Think about that. Number two, the police, I spoke with Jerry Mack about the police chief situation back in April or so. I sent the DCED report to you guys in June, and the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development provides assistance and grants about possible regionalization. So I don't know what we can always think about an interim police chief in the meantime. There doesn't seem to me to be much concern, other than a few council members, about the cost to the taxpayers of all this spending. So we had an excess. That money is going to be spent on your capital projects, which went from 20 to 10. Now we're said there's going to be 20, 26, all these increased costs. I guess there'll be more real estate tax increase to pay for that. So I'm very concerned that this council doesn't appear, specifically management, doesn't appear to be very good financially and taking care of the taxpayer. So their guiding principles are not being followed. But to stand back again, to have Mrs. Keith get up and assassinate my character was beyond the pale with untruths, and to say about what I did and didn't do is unbelievable. So look at the actual court records.
Thank you, David. Your 3 minutes is up. We appreciate your comments.
Yeah, okay.
Any other public comments, Rob, online? Karen, I believe you're on.
I think I am. Can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you, Karen.
Hi, good evening. Karen Weibel, 202 North Cedar Street. Good evening, everyone. I did have one question about the street reconstruction on Front Street, which has to do with the water main. And I just wanted to know if we have an understanding of the impact to the two businesses, I think one on either side of the street. I'm sure you've reached out to them preliminarily. Other than that, I just want to say thank you very much for your commitment, for the work you put into this. I have sat through 12 of these myself. I know the hand-wringing and the intense thought and consideration that goes into this work, and I commend you very much. And I thank you.
Karen, thanks for participating. We appreciate your comments. Andy is acknowledging that the businesses that you referred to have been communicated to and they have plans to accommodate them. Thanks for
Thank you.
calling in.
Thank you.
Rob, any others? Okay. If no other comments, anybody?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Look. Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Question.